Hello, hello. I'm Asmo Urpilainen, the CTO here at Frends Technology, and welcome to today's webinar uh, regarding on how we can actually prepare for the upcoming agentic AI or autonomous AI agents that will be coming in the near future today. And especially how can iPaaS such as Frends help you prepare your organization and IT landscape for the upcoming, let's say, revolution around agentic AI. And of course, this means that we're going to be peering a bit into the crystal ball. So everything that we're going to be covering here today needs to be taken with a bit of a grain of salt, since no one can actually, of course, really know what's going to be happening in the next 12 months or 24 months in the very and of course ever faster evolving AI space. But to set the stage here a bit before we dive into our practical solution for the problem, we of course need to kind of establish where we are today when it comes to AI, and of course large language model AI specifically. And this is basically taken from Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, where he has published a blog about a month or so ago outlining the different stages or levels of large language model AI up until to today's point, but of course into the future as well. So most of you probably are familiar with ChatGPT, and I expect that everyone has used some sort of a large language model chatbot already. But basically, the chatbots were just an algorithm that contained a wealth of information and knowledge about the existing or current world, and were able to converse with the user using natural language and, of course, make inference and inflections about the conversation. But Sam Altman has called chatbots basically the level 1 AI model, but the reason it's level 1 in this case is that the chatbots and of course the large language models like GPT 3.5 and also GPT 4 were actually not that great in tasks that require reasoning, such as, for example, math problems or trying to solve a complex multi-step, let's say, process or problem that you need to actually break down into smaller bits and solve each individual bit at a time. But today we of course also have the next generation of those of AI models available, which Sam Altman has called the reasoners. And a good example of these would be, for example, the GPT-0 model. And this was, and like I said, this is considered level 2. And the ideology is that, of course, now compared to level 1 and the chatbots, the reasoners are capable of solving much more difficult problems. And actually take a little bit of time to, for example, look at different paths to get to a solution and then pick the best one. So there's a huge improvement in the actual decision-making and reasoning capability in the model itself. But the interesting parts start appearing here at level 3 when we start talking about autonomous AI agents, where we don't exactly know, of course, when the autonomous agents will be something that's available to the general public, but this is something that, for example, OpenAI and all of the major AI players are developing currently, and I personally believe that this will be a huge disruption to the market when the autonomous AI agents will be available, and it could be within the, let's say, 2025, so the next year, could be 2026, but it will come sooner, I think, than we actually are anticipating and thinking. But the cool thing about those autonomous AI agents is that they will basically be able to take, for example, entire business processes and execute those or automate those from an end-to-end perspective, basically simulating what or how a human would do within that business process. So let's take an example of like a sales process where You, for example, need to contact your customers via email, you exchange information, you maybe send some material, you typically would use your company CRM while doing all of that. You might have to, let's say, work with some sort of contracts, etc., etc. So the autonomous AI agent would actually be able to do that entire business process from an end-to-end perspective, react to changes while executing those processes, and also make intelligent decisions along the way. And I like quite a lot how Sam Altman has put this in his blog, saying that we're on the brink of AI systems that can operate on a degree of autonomy and decision-making power previously unseen. And I truly believe that this is kind of the next big disruption in the AI field, because of course you can imagine now that if you have an AI agent specializing in a certain business process, you can replicate that with very little cost, almost infinitely. But basically, what this means for us today is that every organization should prepare for the coming disruption around agentic AI and autonomous AI agents. But how can we actually practically do that today, even though we don't really yet know what form the AI agents would actually practically take? So I think we can break this down into 5 points. So first off, we of course need to accept that this change is coming, and it's better to see possibilities with the disruption rather than try to fight it. And especially from the bullet number 2 point of view as well, that we also need to recognize that when these autonomous AI agent models will become available, they will grant any organization a competitive advantage so large that you cannot simply ignore it, because otherwise organizations or competitors who will implement autonomous AI agent architectures and infrastructures will be able to outperform you in the marketplace. But then, of course, we have to also realize that we are working and living here in the real world, and that's very rarely a super optimal or ideal situation, especially from the point of view of IT systems and the IT landscape at any given organization. So we need to recognize that it's impractical and of course also financially impossible for us to change all of our existing systems, all of our existing business processes to facilitate these autonomous AI agents. So that means that the only option from a practical perspective to start taking advantage of the coming AI agents is to allow them to integrate or connect to your existing business processes, your existing IT landscape, your existing systems. And iPaaS, such as Frends, is the solution to providing these coming autonomous AI agents a safe, scalable, verifiable way of basically accessing all of the information, business functionality, and like I said, even business processes natively from the AI model itself. So how does that work from a practical perspective? So AI models even today, such as ChatGPT, for example, have a functionality where they can have or they can utilize so-called tools or functions, depending a little bit on the model and service you're using. But good examples of these functions or tools could be, for example, browsing the web or searching Wikipedia articles or calling an external API that you have set up to be available for the model. And this approach where we can actually tell the autonomous AI agent model, or even the ChatGPT models of today, that this is basically a tool that you have access to, and this is how you integrate for that tool, and this is how you're supposed to be using that tool, like I said, is going to most likely become a fairly accepted global standard. And the approach where those tools can be plugged into existing models is very unlikely to change, even with the advent of those autonomous AI agents. But of course, the catch here is that even if you have autonomous AI agents that are many times or orders of magnitude more intelligent, are capable at making decisions, and of course, for example, automating those entire business processes like I mentioned previously, the AI models will be highly unlikely to be able to fully actually understand how your current system and IT landscape operates, and more importantly, how do some of your business processes actually work. And that means that then we need to bring in the iPaaS to solve that problem. And from a practical perspective, we could take a look at this example. So this is from a maintenance service company, but basically a simple sequence diagram explaining how a business process would operate, where the maintenance services company would receive an order, and then various kinds of activities need to happen with the service provider systems, in this case the CRM and ERP systems, to actually be able to fulfill that order, or for example start the repairs for the broken power line as we are using in our example here. So from a practical perspective, even though the AI will most likely be able to understand that, hey, I need to receive the order, I need to, for example, put the order to some sort of a system to start the repair work, etc., the AI model will not be able to understand how do the CRM and ERP systems actually work together, what are the interconnected dependencies, like in our case, for example, we need to first check if a customer exists, we need to create that customer, and once the customer is created, only then we can actually insert the order into the ERP and continue with the automation of the business process. So that's especially now where iPaaS comes in, is to solve these individual pieces and offer that in a nice package way for the AI. But this was a fairly simple example, but of course you can think that the problem gets even worse if you have very strict business processes where, for example, approvals need to happen, or you have multiple different systems in multiple different locations that need to be handled in very specific way or very strict ways to actually enable that functionality for the business process. But also in the case of legacy systems where actually just practically connecting to the system can be fairly tricky and not something that the AI agent will be able to do on its own. And in certain cases, we might also have regulatory requirements where we really need to adhere to a strict way of executing these processes and executing these business functions within these business processes. But basically that means that to avoid changing all of your existing systems, business processes, and your entire IT landscape, like I mentioned, you will need an iPaaS, and you will need an iPaaS that can, of course, number one, offer connectivity to all of your existing systems, applications, and data sources. You will, of course, need an iPaaS that can orchestrate and execute complex business processes so that then you can offer that nicely in a packaged way to the AI agent or the AI model. And of course, you need to be able to automatically maintain those packaged business processes, business functionalities offered to the AI model in the first place, because as changes occur in our system landscape or in our business processes, those need to be reflected in real time for the agentic AI or autonomous AI agents to be able to actually work in real time with the current environment you have. And of course, we mustn't forget that we still need to be able to, of course, monitor and govern and basically stay in control of what the AI is actually doing with our data and our systems. And of course, iPaaS has excellent tools to provide automatic governance and monitoring around anything that the AI is using to access through the iPaaS. And just as a little bit of a reminder, of course, for here in the Frends platform, we offer excellent connectivity capabilities to modern as well as legacy systems with our more than 250 open source connectors to establish that connectivity part. We have, of course, in Frends, as many of you probably know, world-class or best-in-class capabilities when it comes to orchestrating and modeling out business functions and also entire business processes. And of course, we are using the globally accepted BPM and 2.0 standard there, so that's another check in a box. We have our hybrid capability or hybrid routing architecture, which allows us to basically seamlessly access any systems anywhere in the world, be they in local data centers or hyperscaler clouds or in multiple factories spread across all the continents. The Frends architecture enables also that connectivity from a, let's say, network or infrastructure perspective. And finally, of course, Frends has excellent built-in API management capabilities that we can then use to offer all of these business processes, this business functionality, the data, to the autonomous AI agent through our API management. And of course, there we use the API management capabilities to secure access to the APIs, but also to monitor and govern and let's say control the life cycle of certain functions and processes that the iPaaS is governing. And finally, of course, we here at Frends have a very innovative approach, which we are now, of course, titling and calling the toolbox or Frends or iPaaS as the toolbox for an AI, where the ideology is now that any solutions that we create using these functionalities, we can automatically package into these AI-compatible tools, publish those automatically for the AI, and maintain basically the toolkit's up-to-dateness or maintain the tools to be as real-time compatible as possible. So what should basically this toolbox architecture from a practical technical perspective contain? So like I mentioned, typically the tool is technically offered through an API management solution or capability where we secure access to the API, but also we need to provide technical description for the AI to be able to technically actually call that API. But that's not enough in and of itself. So even if we can expose the API, we can have technical capability to access it, and the AI understands, for example, what sort of parameters should be provided for any given API, where of course the business functionality, data, and processes are behind that API. We also need to tell the API within which context should the AI model or the autonomous AI agent actually use which tool or which API. And the way that we're solving that is we're of course attaching this business description of that functionality, business process or data. And the business description is something that really frames the tool, a single tool in the toolbox, in a correct light so that the AI model can actually understand when and how I'm actually supposed to use this and what are the ramifications of using that particular tool in the toolbox or toolkit. And of course, what then happens is all of that needs to be maintained in real time, like I mentioned. So any update to the business processes or the practical API endpoints need to be also updated or pushed towards the AI agent itself, so that then whenever it's executing its next iteration of, let's say, that sales business process or that receive an order business process, the tools might evolve over time, but the AI actually has also always the access to the latest version of the business processes and functions we utilize. But maybe from a little bit of a more practical perspective to put all of this into everything that we've covered here today into a more, I guess, understandable form, let's run a little bit of a simulation of how this will work in real life. So on the left side of the screen here, we have, let's say, a portion of the screen reserved for the internal thoughts or thinking that would occur inside an autonomous AI agent. And on the right side of the screen, we have Frends iPaaS orchestrated business processes published through Frends iPaaS API management capabilities to be available for the autonomous AI agent. So typically how this would work is that, for example, if we take the same example we previously looked at about receiving a work order and automating the, let's say, creation of the work order in the customers or customers ERP and CRM systems, what the autonomous AI agent would be able to, for example, do is detect that, hey, I have now received a work order in an email box dedicated for me. I understand that I need to actually now insert that work order into the ERP system, so I need a tool for that. So the AI would look into the toolbox published from the iPaaS for the AI agent to find something suitable, now especially based on the business description I mentioned on the last slide, to find a tool that it can work with to achieve its goal, in this case, of course, inserting the work order to the ERP. So, of course, it's now able to find a tool that would be able to help it achieve its goal. And in this case, we've just simply named the tool work or WO, so work order underscore incoming. And it basically now understands that, hey, in that particular tool, if the business description lets me know that this is the correct tool to do what I need to do, it now is able to now also understand that what type of parameters or data does that tool require in order for me to actually consume it. So in this case, it knows that that tool has certain fields, certain data that the tool actually needs to function, and how it can achieve actually consuming that tool is, of course, extracting all of the needed data from the order the AI agent, of course, received in the email. So now that it's extracted all of the data, it's found a tool, it's been able to match the extracted data to the model that the tool requires, it can, of course, consume that tool. And practically, that's, of course, an API call to the Frends iPaaS API management layer, behind which we have an orchestrated work order process, where we are, of course, inserting that work order into the ERP. And as you can see here, of course, the process that we are describing also has some decision-making, data validation, different types of error handling for different types of scenarios present, and of course the actual connectivity to both the CRM as well as the ERP systems. And in the end, what we want to do is either return an error or unsuccessful order being inserted back to the AI agent. But the tool has now received an error message back. So in this case, what ended up happening is that the process actually executed and exited from the error node here, where we didn't actually find that customer in our ERP or CRM system, preventing us from actually inserting the order into the ERP. But because we have had that business description I mentioned earlier, we're also telling the autonomous AI agent that, hey, these are the possible error scenarios, what can happen, and what should the AI do in all of these different scenarios. And in this case, we've of course let the AI know that you need to have a customer in the CRM system first before you can actually push the order in to the ERP system. So that means that the AI is now able to make a decision to start finding a tool to create that customer in the CRM system. And again, like previously, we can of course now find that tool to, of course, create a new customer in our CRM system. We can also extract or manipulate or extrapolate all of the needed data from the incoming work order, and we can consume that second tool in the toolbox. And of course, what the second tool is basically doing is quite simply, very similar to the first one, creating that customer in the CRM system, allowing the first process to be repeated and completed successfully. And in this case, we of course let the AI know from the iPaaS that, hey, in this time, customer creation was successful. What you need to do next is, of course, just rerun or re-execute the first tool, trying to, of course, insert the order into the ERP system itself. And in this case, because we've just successfully been able to create that customer into the CRM process, now the order creation into the ERP is successful, and we can actually finalize the business process by responding to the original customer email that, hey, your order has now been received, and also, of course, maybe include some additional information about the next steps in the processing of the order. So this was just a little bit of a, let's say, peer inside the mind of how such an autonomous AI agent would be able to interact with iPaaS. How do all of these concepts link together, and why we need all of the capabilities from connectivity to the systems, to the orchestration of those business processes, to the actual, let's say, technical definition of how the autonomous AI agent is connecting to a tool, but most importantly, the business description that lets the AI agent understand how, when, why should I use these tools, and for example, also what should happen if the execution of the tool fails for whatever reason. All right, so to basically put a little bit more context on the architecture we just covered, we have created a sample here, and you can of course do this yourself even today, and even if we don't have autonomous AI agents available yet, where we've created a Frends pricing assistant agent, which is actually connecting to an API that Frends iPaaS is publishing, with the business description attached, explaining how that API behaves and what's, of course, the information content in that API. In our case, what this is basically a simple list of the existing Frends products and tiers that we have. And we can, of course, see here that we can consume the API in the API management functionality and section of Frends, and it would behave exactly like you would expect. So we get a whole bunch of information and data about different Frends pricing tiers and products. And next, of course, what we can do is we can ask the agent, I would like to purchase Frends. And we can actually see here that the agent or AI model in this case is talking now to the tool that we just showed you, and it's able to now help the customer, or the user in this case, basically find the correct, let's say, tier that the customer would like to purchase, because it understands the information content inside the tool as well as how it's supposed to use that. So then we could ask it, for example, how much does Frends business with 100 integration solutions cost? And it's able to now present you with a quite nice calculation explaining how the Frends pricing works by being able to integrate to that tool. And maybe lastly, but not least, some key takeaways, I think, from the webinar here. So I really just want to highlight and underline this, that autonomous AI agents are going to be capable of automating entire business processes in a way that I think no one is ready to really experience or even expect. And they will be able to be much more intelligent than any AI model currently today, meaning that they can also adjust their behavior on the fly. And that's very, very important to understand why these autonomous AI agents are going to be disrupting multiple industries. But what that means is that we are, of course, now proposing the toolbox architecture, where the iPaaS actually can be used to package, maintain, and govern all of your existing business processes, functions, and data into these AI-compatible tools that then you can quite simply plug an AI agent into. And we, of course, feel that iPaaS is not the place where the actual AI model itself will live, especially considering that the development of these AI models is going to be exponential. So it's going to get faster and faster and faster and faster, meaning that the toolbox architecture you can actually even implement today, and that prepares you and your organization for years to come. Because now with the toolbox architecture, you can quite simply plug in, let's say, newer versions of the coming AI agent models once they're available. You could have multiple AI agents utilizing the same toolbox or toolkit, and you are not coupling the development and utilization of those agentic AIs into your integration platform, but rather the integration platform, or iPaaS or Frends in this case, is enabling you to take those automated AI agents or agentic AI into use much, much more efficiently, and in a way that you basically ensure and guarantee that any developments in the future are also covered by your existing architecture. That's everything we had time here for today, so I thank you for your time. And of course, for more information, please do visit frends.com. We'll try and answer any questions you might have on the webinar in the chat as best as we can. And just as a final advertisement, we are of course now implementing a huge and wide array of AI features inside of Frends as well, following similar themes that we've basically covered today. And we will be having a very detailed webinar about the new AI-based features and other updates on the Frends platform itself come January 2025. But thank you, and talk to you again soon.